the road again. We can't wait to get on the road again. Telling stories to our family and our friends. We can't wait to get on the road again. On the road again. We can't wait to get on the road again. Telling stories to our friends. We can't wait to get on the road again.
Welcome to our monthly AAA podcast, Affinity, Allie, and Annette on the road to good storytelling with your hosts, Allie Spooner and moi.
Welcome, I'm Allie Spooner. I write with Affinity Rainbow Publications, and I've written quite a few books, and I'm probably best known as a genre hopper. I write in paranormal, light romance, medium romance, cowgirls, FBI agents, you name it. I enjoy reading short stories, but I tell you, I am terrible at writing them. So I look forward to our conversations today. We meet, we invite guests every month to talk to us, and I hope you will enjoy speaking with Karin and Annette today. And we appreciate your support in our podcast, and we invite you to visit Affinity Rainbow Publications to check out our books.
Thank you, Allie. And I'm Annette Mori, and I'm the other co-host to this wonderful podcast. And I won't say too much because I've introduced myself a million times, but I'm also with Affinity Rainbow Publications, and I definitely am a multi-sub-genre writer as well as Allie. So this month, we're going to be talking about short story anthologies and collections. And I'm very excited to talk with Karin because I actually didn't know the difference between an anthology and a short story collection. And she's gonna enlighten us on those differences. So, and I'm hoping that she's also going to talk about her latest compilation, Frosting on the Cake 3. I'm kind of excited to hear about that.
All right. So, following our podcast, we'll upload to a newly created YouTube channel and hope you consider subscribing so you never miss a future podcast.
I have the absolute pleasure of introducing Karin, who's an icon in the sapphic fiction industry. Karin Kallmaker's devotion to lesbian fiction began after the film Desert Hearts led her to the library and the card catalog subject index lesbians-fiction. Her novels include multiple Goldie and Lammy Award winners. Best-selling works include Cowboys and Kisses, Captain of Industry, and Painted Moon, and span sapphic romance, lesbian erotica, and lesbian science fiction/fantasy. Regardless of genre, women are the heroes of their own lives in every story. Many of Karin's 30-plus novels over 30-plus years have been translated into other languages and professionally performed for audio. More than 6 dozen short stories and novellas have appeared in anthologies and collections from multiple publishers. Her writing career began in 1989 with Naiad Press. Current novels are published with Bella Books and shorter works under her own imprint, Romance and Chocolate Ink. She is a Stonewall National Museum, Archives and Library Distinguished Author and a Goldie Crown Literary Society trailblazer. A native of California, Karin lives near San Francisco. She and her wife celebrate 50 years of togetherness next year and are the mothers of 2 exceptional kids, now all grown up. She blogs regularly at Romance and Chocolate and is quite pleased to be descended from Lady Godiva. What a great intro.
All right. That is a great intro. All right. So
it's mostly true too. Yeah.
Oh, well, obviously you're an icon, trailblazer,
right.
So many things.
Absolutely. So without further ado, Karin, if you're ready, take it away.
I am ready. I'm going to read from, as Annette said, Frosting on the Cake 3, which is subtitled Still Crazy After All These Years, and it's been a lot of years. And this short story is called Kindling, which catches up with the characters from my novel Above Temptation. It's September, and it's 15 years after the close of the novel. Tam tried not to spill any of her hot coffee as she hurried to the cabin's ground floor bay window. She wasn't entirely successful, but she didn't want to miss it. The moment that she'd surfaced out of an exhausted sleep, she'd realized what the steady crunch thunk had to be. Kip was chopping wood, and a lovely sight it was. In spite of the frosty late September temperatures of the deep forest off Puget Sound, Kip wore a tank top and jeans. Her petite frame was a study in muscles and circular motion as she lifted the axe, arced it on her right side around her calf, hip, shoulder, overhead, and then down. Log split with a satisfying crack. Energy, purpose, drive. That was Kip in a nutshell. After leaving behind the 90-degree weather in Seattle just across the Sound, the 50-degree chill was proving a shock to Tam's system. Yet there was Kip, breath misting in the air as she worked, reveling in it. The cabin's remote location in the lee of the Olympic Mountains was its biggest appeal, especially when they were both so badly in need of a break. A bruising summer and fall of endless travel and stress had dealt them nonstop setbacks and challenges. For Tam, it was coping badly with a legal system that could no longer be counted on as an ally in prosecuting financial fraud. Last week, she'd run into Mercedes Houston, her former assistant, and now Sterling Fraud Investigations VP of Operations. It had been some time since their paths had overlapped. Mercedes had lured Tam to her nearby office with the promise of genuine Kona coffee. Her office door had scarcely closed before Mercedes picked up their last conversation as if it had never ended. When are you going to get a life? How much weight have you lost? What do you think is going to happen if you take a real vacation, a long vacation? Tam had made the usual excuses, said yes, but several times, and finally yielded up a weak-ass promise that she'd try. Sure. If she took a real vacation, there'd be one less voice pushing back against the unraveling judicial system that preferred to fine companies for fraud instead of jailing the people who'd made the fraudulent decisions. It was harder than ever to get convictions and damage payouts that would deter future repeating behavior. Openly shop your case to a judge who thought wealth was the same as the law, delay every possible step of the way, and walk free when prosecutors simply couldn't keep going. Kip's axe continued to rise and fall with satisfying results. Tam supposed she ought to get dressed and offer to stack the wood. Later, when her working woman came in, having fresh coffee or something to eat, maybe that would be better. Kip leaned on the axe and glanced back at the cabin. Tam waved and wasn't sure Kip could see her until Kip blew back a kiss. With a deep breath, she let all her love for Kip well up. No reason to put it away to focus on work. They didn't have to go back across the Sound until tomorrow night. With that thought, something in her chest twisted. She winced and forced herself to take a very deep breath. The pleasure of the morning fled, and the thought echoed in her head, the one she'd been ignoring for far too long. Do the math. By tomorrow night, they'd have spent 48 hours at the cabin. Add 3-hour drives on each end. 54 hours together. Just them. 54 hours was the most continuous time they'd spent together over the past 11 months. She didn't want to do the math. The math sucked.
That's great. That's wonderful.
That sounds like a great story.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah,
like I said, I'm anxious to hear all about all of your stories in Frosting on the Cake 3. It's such a wonderful concept that I blatantly stole.
All right. So thank you for the lovely reading. Miss Annette, are you ready to do yours?
I am. And like I said, I blatantly stole the idea from Karin. After I saw her very first Frosting on the Cake, I thought, what a great idea to take a bunch of short stories. And I titled mine a little more risque. Mine's Cherry on the Top. So, but kind of the same theme. Anyways, I'm going to read from, I initially was going to read from a story called Rainstorm, but it's kind of sad, and I didn't want to be sad with all the stuff going on in the world. I wanted something
Yeah.
more fun and happy. So I'm going to read from a short story that is a Halloween story, but it combines three of my books. It brings characters together from the book Addict series, and then the organization universe, and then also from my very first book, Love Forever, Live Forever. And it's called Witches, Vampires, and Shifters. Oh my. And it has my favorite character, Val, in it from the organization because she's such a badass. With her hip resting against the kitchen counter, Val waited patiently for the tiny human to settle on the chair. When her small legs began to swing, Val knew her daughter was ready to start the day. Anticipating the first question, she looked down. Pepper was entirely too advanced for her age, and it didn't help that brilliant women surrounded her. However, Val was not one of them. An unhealthy breakfast was their ritual, something that had started in her second year. Breakfast with Mama V, while Mama G slept in. Even after Gina had chastised her for the other tradition of ice cream on holiday breakfasts, sleeping in had won out. Can we have ice cream for breakfast tomorrow? Pepper looked at Val through her long lashes. With her pale gray eyes and dark curls, she would indeed develop into a beauty that would challenge Val's overprotective side. At only 6, she was already charming everyone around her, including Val. The fact that Pepper had gotten her pale gray eyes from her father, which had never affected Gina's love for her daughter, was a testament to her wife's strength. Gina never let that distinctive feature remind her of the fateful night her ex-husband brutally assaulted her, which resulted in Pepper's conception. Instead, when the color of Pepper's eyes became apparent, Gina exclaimed, "Oh, Val, she has your eyes. I was hoping they would develop the same shade as yours." Val knew this was Gina's way of making Val feel as though she was every bit a part of the new life, regardless of biology. And it did. "Pepper, you know the deal we made with Mommy G, only on holidays." Val allowed herself to smile at her daughter. None of her fellow agents or those pesky witches and magicians were around to tease her when she was just the two of them. She had a reputation to maintain. People were comfortable knowing that Val, the badass, was protecting them. And if they saw her softer side, they might feel less inclined to go about their business as if nobody was out to get them. "Halloween is a holiday." Pepper crossed her arms and pushed her lips out. "Who told you that? You know we only count the major holidays, like Christmas, Thanksgiving, New Year's, and the 4th of July when everyone celebrates." "That was the deal. Mama G will murder me if I let you expand the days." "She will not. She loves you and you love me." "Can Aunt Amara take me trick-or-treating tomorrow?" Val frowned. "Why? You don't want me to take you?" "I want you to come too, but Aunt Tony says Aunt Amara is a real witch, so she'll know the lay of the land." "What's lay of the land mean, Mama V?" Pepper tilted her head. "Lay of the land is like when I scope out one of those bad man warehouses to find their strong and weak points." Val never thought twice about explaining what she and the other agents did to keep the world safe. Pepper continued her argument. "You always want to stay here in the compound, and I'm old enough to go outside now. You promised to take me outside to the new neighborhood a few miles from the cabin when I got bigger. Those houses are enormous. I bet they have good candy." "We'll see." "And that's not true. Remember when your Mama G brought you to California and we went to the zoo and Disneyland?" "Big effing deal," Pepper pouted. "That was 2 trips out of my whole life." Val had to hold back the laugh. She really needed to talk to Gina about changing schools. Pepper was getting a mouth on her. Val was sure she had learned that in school. "Pepper, language." "I didn't say the bad word, not like you who says the bad word all the time," Pepper defended. Val sighed. "The cabin above our compound helps protect our location. You know that. If we venture out too far, it's dangerous. Amara might be a real witch, but she's also a big pain in my pop." Okay, that was Witches, Vampires, and Shifters, and the pop was
Halloween
tomorrow.
is a major holiday. I'm sorry. I'm totally with Pepper on that.
I know.
Completely.
But I had to do a little conflict there so that she wouldn't always get
Yeah,
what she wanted. But I agree with you. I think Halloween's a
absolutely.
holiday
You
too.
know, and you want to hit the houses that might have full-size candy bars because that is living large.
That's
Man, when you got a full-size Snickers, oh, you could
right.
barter that for like, 15 pixie
Yeah.
sticks. It was pretty cool.
So, Karen,
And you can't blame her for arguing for ice cream on breakfast, you know?
Yeah.
I was actually with her, and of course, as the story goes on, Val gives in because she always gives in to her daughter anyway. She's one of those that's,
Yeah.
the big bad assassin, but she has this really big
Total
soft
mush
heart
ball.
for
Yeah.
her wife and her daughter. Yeah. So I was so happy when you contacted me, Karen, and said, the first question you should ask is what's the difference between a short story collection and an anthology? Because I'm sort of embarrassed to say, but not really, because, I
I
don't know.
didn't know. I literally didn't know. I had to go prowl around the web and definitions vary, but generally a collection is a single author and an anthology is multiple authors. That's the simplest division.
Okay.
There's some underlying issues with who holds copyrights and who does the compilation work and where the editing happens and all of that sort of stuff. But generally, a collection is a single author, maybe two people working on the same theme, or they've co-written certain, parts of it, but it's limited, whereas an anthology is multiple authors.
So, okay, so that's interesting because when you first asked that question, I didn't look it up because I wanted to wait and hear your answer. But I also wondered if it makes a difference, the anthologies that I've been a part of, there was a theme.
Mhm.
It wasn't just let's get a bunch of authors together and
Which is
um
really
and
common with,
do a bunch of stories. So, but anthologies don't have to be a theme. They can
no,
be just a collection of
yeah,
different
they could
authors.
be, a publisher might put to get together a collection of their award winners, which have nothing to do with each other.
Okay.
Some might be sci-fi, or some might be fantasy, some might be romance. It depends.
Yeah.
Or there used to be, I don't know if you remember, the best of lesbian short stories, Cleus Press would put out, but they did a general call to the wider
Yeah.
Sapphic community, asking for short stories that had been published during this particular time period, a year usually. So if you publish something in 2008, you could submit it, and then it would be included in their anthology if they selected it. So that's just another way. And the only thing they would have in common is their time frame, and that they were all Sapphic.
Yeah, I do. I actually do remember that because when I first
Mhm.
started, well, I first found Lesfic, and I just typed in, because this was back in the days when gosh, you were lucky to have, a bookstore that where you could find books. This was
Yeah.
pre ebooks. Then, of course, Kindle came on the market, and I found Kindle books, and so I started searching the web, and there still wasn't a whole lot out there yet,
Mhm.
And of course, you came up, your name came up, Radcliffe's name came up,
Mhm.
a bunch of people's, and I remember there were those short story collections. I don't know that when was that? Was that back in the maybe the late 90s,
I think
early 2000s?
Cleus's last one might have been as late as 2008, 2009,
Okay,
somewhere
yeah,
around
so
there.
2000s.
Yeah, but they started in the 1990s for sure.
Yeah, yeah. So, and I remember reading a few of those, but to be honest, I mean, this is kind of embarrassing to say, I will read short stories and anthologies, but they aren't my primary go-to
Mhm.
for whatever reason.
Yeah,
And
that's true of most people, which is why I think things that have anthologies with themes or collections with themes help to draw in the readers who are saying,
right.
oh, I do want a piece of whatever that is, that particular fill in the blank might be. So I think themed ones probably do a lot better. So like recently, Bella did one called Conference Call, I think it was,
Yeah,
which was
I
just
looked at
short
that.
stories that, yeah,
Mhm.
short stories set at conferences.
Yep.
And then I know Bold Strokes has done several,
Yeah.
and Ilva just did a really fun one with their own authors.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and Halloween themed ones, and
Yes, I've been part of those.
yeah,
And
exactly.
Affinity
So,
also does. We used to do Christmas was,
mhm.
Julie Jam Dragon, who is our fearless leader, she loves Christmas. So I think Affinity for years did Christmas anthology, and I think she's done some Halloween anthologies, and I've been a part of some Halloween anthologies. So I would guess it's popular to do holiday themed anthologies.
Right. And it's a
With
great way to get to introduce people to a variety of writers, because one might just go, "Ah, I really like the way that person did that thing. I'm going to
Yeah,
go look at the rest of their work and see if I can
exactly.
find something I really want to dive into hard." Yeah.
Exactly. So I remember when you first came out with Frosting on the Cake, which again I thought was a brilliant idea, and I'm just kind of wondering what sort of inspired you to write that first Frosting on the Cake collection.
Well, that was back in the days of print only. So it wasn't a world where you put out a novel and then you could just toss a short story onto the web and offer it as a follow-up or any part of the original novel. You wrote the novel, you were done. And after about 8 or 9 novels, I did have ideas that related to the characters. Like, oh, something happens in the world, and I'd say, oh, those two people in that book would have really been interested in that, in this turn of events. So that was kind of, I thought, why don't I write short stories based on the novels? And then I gave myself some rules, which was that the short story had to be written in the contemporary I was in. They wouldn't start right after the end of the novel. They would be, okay, it's been 5 years since that novel ended, and this is the contemporary, and this is them in this time stream. And that was easy the first time when it was only 5 years and 2 years. But this time, when it was, for one story, 26 years, I really had to say, okay, so they were 26 and now they're in their late 60s. What are their lives like? And how has the passage of history we all shared affected them? What problems did they have to solve when they were getting together? Because there was always something that had to be fixed. And did that problem get solved for good, kind of thing? So in one novel appears in all 3 Frosting collections. So there was the story, and then there was the canon that happened in the first 2 short stories. I had to consult that, and they showed up in a novel in a really brief scene, and I had to be sure I covered that. And so it got to be a lot hairier on the third time around than the first time around. It was much simpler. And the world, of course, has gotten incredibly more complex. We've all been on a roller coaster ride.
You know, the premise of the anthologies and the collections is just such a neat idea, and I agree. You know, that's a perfect way to introduce new authors, or get some more ideas out there. Um, do you find it harder to write in the genres that you do, knowing that eventually you're going to come back and maybe add a short story to go with it?
I don't think no, I don't. In fact, I kind of welcome it because it becomes a way to park something that doesn't quite fit in the novel. I can say, oh, it'd be really interesting to do a little side story on how fun this particular aspect of their job is, but it would be completely distracting in the novel. So I say, okay, well, maybe in a short story, we'll get to that. We'll go into the ever so much fun that financial auditing is, which is, gripping subject for
Yeah.
most people, and better left out of the novel. But a short story, I did kind of get away with, actually featuring what forensic and financial auditing looks like on the ground when you're looking at people committing fraud right in front of you. Um, so that was
So is
fun.
it?
So it's a way to park it.
You good?
Oh, I was going to ask if it was hard for you to decide which books that you'll do a short story about. Because it sounds like sometimes I think I'm gonna
Mm.
add on to this with a short story. But have you always known that, that this book is the one that I'm going to add one with, or have you done it to every single book that you've ever written? Have you?
Oh, no, 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 no. Some it's not that hard in that I sort of inventory the stories. I'll go back. I had to reread all of my books more than once, and that's when you discover things like, oh, look, I never gave that character an eye color. Isn't that interesting? And just note to self, give your characters eye colors. It really would be good. But it's more or less running through what those characters were going through in their story and saying, how does that relate to the world today? And is there a story to tell that fits right now? And in one case, there was one of my novels, maybe next time, I thought I would probably never write a follow-up on, mostly because the main character stopped talking to me. But she actually kind of popped up when I looked at it and said, you know what, I have something I would like to say. And so I thought, okay, we'll see if this works for a short story. And mostly it was that she's okay. That was all she wanted to say was, I'm okay. I'm okay. I might be quiet, but I'm okay.
And do you find that you're writing your short stories leads you into a new book to
Um,
kind of continue their adventure?
not to, no, I would say generally not. I don't write series in general. I don't write series. And so even the novel where I wrote three follow-ups, it never felt like that should have been a novel of its own. They were very specific.
Okay.
In some cases, I'm having the fun of making a stylistic choice. And so one of those follow-ups was actually journal writing by one of the characters, and she was relating the things that were going on around her, and why that was in so many ways heartbreaking for her, and hopefully the reader in doing that got to see how the character had missed some important facts that would have saved her some of her anguish. But that was just a stylistic choice. And I don't want to do a whole novel that's in journal format, but a short story you get to play. And sometimes you get to play with timelines. You get to tell the story backwards, where a current event, and then you get to peel it back. How did we get here? And then resolve it. So you get to play with the short story. You don't have to be stuck in the same sort of linear storytelling that readers really expect in a novel, especially in romance.
Yeah, prequels. Yeah, you can do a prequel
Yeah.
short story.
Yes, indeed, you can. Also, and I had the fortune to do some anniversary editions, and some of the short stories that are in like Frosting 3, I think one, maybe two, but I think it's just one, was actually written for the anniversary edition of the book. And so I included it so that the readers who didn't buy the anniversary edition because they already had the first one would get a chance to read the short story as well. Or if their first introduction to the book was the anniversary edition, they got that bonus with it. So that was just another way to play with what can I get into readers' hands, especially the ones who bought the book back when it was paper only. And why would they buy another? They have this one and it's got, Naiad Press on it. It's the original cover. Why would they, pick up a different copy? So I wanted them to be able to read the story too.
Yeah, good thing. So, you kind of alluded to this that short stories or anthologies, short story collections or anthologies don't sell quite as well
No.
as full-length novels. Do you know why that might be?
Oh, well, I think as you expressed, it's not everybody's jam. Some people like short stories because their life is such that they need those short bites, that they can't have the continuity on a big saga, for example, but they're standing constantly on hold for things. And so they pick up a short story and they might be able to get through it before their next appointment or whatever it is. But most people, it's not their go-to. They have to be enticed, I think. So they become in many cases, they are for exposure, that you get exposed to. If you have a couple of really, people who really draw readers who will buy the anthology, well, they might read your story too. So but I don't think they're ever really money makers for anybody. And the thing that I've run into, and you might run into in that with yours, is that readers, what they want to do is reread the novel that the story goes with, and then read the story. So they get the book, but then they don't read it right away. So it may take them a year to read all those short stories. And so it makes a difference in this world of where we have to have X many number of reviews and purchases and et cetera in order to rank on Amazon and all of that stuff. It monks with that, but it does give the reader the chance of saying, I'm going to reread that story, which I love it when people reread my work. It's a huge payoff. And during the pandemic, people were telling me that they were picking up my books because it was a guaranteed good ending and they were comfortable with it. I reread books during the pandemic and lockdown. So it's just a different experience for the people who are reading, especially when they're saying, I want to read that novel first. I want to remind myself of the novel and then I'll read the story. So it makes their immersion into the collection very different than that of their immersion into a novel. And it just changes the way the reader experiences the book. But, I wanted them to have that experience. So cool.
Do you have a
Well,
favorite?
I think everybody will agree that we see you as the queen of romance. And it's interesting that in your bio that you include science fiction and fantasy in your repertoire of books. Do you find it harder to write that than just a straight out romance?
In some ways, it's easier, especially given the world we're in right now, because you get to world build. And if you don't like that aspect of the world, you can just take it out. And you don't have to confront the realities. I'm one of those writers who goes back and forth between, oh, that's unprofessional. I don't know what that's about. Sorry, I don't know if you could hear that. My phone suddenly started ringing. I like having my novels grounded in some piece of reality of the time it was written in. So right now, writing a story is very different from writing a story, say, in 1998, when it looked like maybe we were going to get to overturn some of the legislation that made us felons, and maybe we could get marriage through. And then we have today where we're just clinging to what we won and trying not to have it taken away. And so when a reader approaches either of those books, they're going to feel the time period, even though they're sort of contemporary now is kind of the goal. I like that time period there. It's who we are. And in some cases, I feel like I'm mirroring what the community generally is going through. So when I go to fantasy and sci-fi, I don't have to do that.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, I can talk about things writ large, like fascism is fascism, no matter where it is. But it's just not the same. It's something I put on myself, but it's not the same push to include that sense of the now and what's going on.
Yeah. So now but you've written some standalone books too, right?
Mm-hmm.
Not just.
Yeah, most of my books are standalone.
I mean, no short stories. You've written some standalone short stories, not ones connected to books, or have you
yes.
not?
Oh, I have.
Or
yeah.
like anthologies
Anthology
and things.
calls. Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's always fun when somebody gives you like a basic writing prompt and you can just do whatever you want with it.
Yeah. So what's your favorite short story that you've written?
That I've written? Oh, goodness. That's almost impossible to pack. It's like children, Oh, I like this one. And it all depends on the mood. Do I feel like something sweet and salty, or do I feel like something sweet and sour? It's really, it's hard. I'll pick a recent one called Black Velvet and a Little Boy's Smile, which is not related to anything. It's just a story about meeting up at a wedding. And with the elements of butch femme, we've got bridesmaid and you've got, groomswoman, and
I read that. Wasn't that in an anthology? Was that in the Velvet anthology?
It was in the Velvet anthology. Yeah. It was very, very short. It was about 2,000 words because we were limited on the number of words we could do. And so when I thought, well, I could just put that up separately so that people have access to it. It's been about 5 years since the anthology came out, et cetera. And then it turned into a 7,000 word short story when I started really filling in the pieces and giving the wedding itself some dimension and color. Because I mean, the difference between, for me, a short story and like a novella is how many settings there are. Because as soon as you add a setting, you're adding length. As soon as you add a character, even a side character, you're adding length. So a short story is like two people and they talk to each other, and that's about what happens. In a novella, you're going to have a cast of maybe 4 or 5 people in 3 or 4 settings that you flesh out. And so I liked where that story just ended up. It was rich and lush, and it was full of self-discovery and a black velvet jacket, which, ew.
I remember it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I read it. I remember it. So how much of your personal life, Karin, makes it into your books or your short stories?
I would say that initially I was very write what you know. And I took that to mean that I belonged in the stories. And so some of my earlier books, probably more of me, certainly more of the community I lived in, which was Sacramento in the 1980s, early 90s, not the most liberal of places, but not the most conservative of places either. A very small, vibrant women's community, which included lesbian community. We had a great women's bookstore. And so there was a lot of me. The little pieces of my life in that setting popped up, and probably less and less of me as time went on. And I learned how to use voice and imbue the characters with things that didn't have anything to do with me and didn't have, they didn't come right out of my thought process. I had to develop them, which gets harder, and yet it's more fun. And so, but again, even then, writing a story that did not reflect the world as I saw it, either the threats or the opportunities or the importance, I found in Frosting 3 really focused down hard on the relationships between people, because right now that's where I find the hope. That's where I find all of the evidence that people have not changed that much. Love is still there. It's all in the interpersonal. It is also in the brief exchange with a checkout person. It's with a person you pass on the street and say, what a beautiful day to, or you say hi even. It's those little moments, or that's the human family at work. And so this third collection really focused on, that's where we heal. That's where we feel safe, is the interpersonal. And that may not have been true, let's say, in the second anthology, where the world was perhaps more hopeful and kinder overall. So my characters dreamed larger. They interacted in a larger stage than just the interpersonal stage. So I guess you could call that maybe a waveform, where that was this way at the beginning and then it changed, and then hopefully it's going to go back. And yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Let's hope. It's a cyclical world. Okay, Allie,
It
I'm
really
not going to
is.
let you completely off the hook, because you mentioned that you don't really write short stories, or you don't like to write them, or they're hard for you, but you have a collection of erotica short stories,
Ooh.
and you also wrote one of my all-time favorite short stories that I've ever read, Shotgun Rider. And so I want you to just tell us a little bit about those. Are you still with us, Ellie?
You're asking me?
I am, yes.
Yes. Wow. The erotica was just something that I used to play with more as a hobby than anything else. And, I thought, I had quite a few of them that I had written, and Julie convinced me to put them together in um, a collection, so to speak. And so we published that. And the Shotgun Rider that I know you love, you tell me all the time that's one of your favorites. To me, it was a way to demonstrate and to heal from grief,
Mm.
from losing someone very close. Um, I still read it sometimes, and it still makes me cry. But It serves a purpose. It serves. It's therapeutic for me to be able to go back to that time and relive those feelings, and realize that, hey, you've survived all this.
Yeah.
Life moves on. It was a difficult time, but you made it through, and you had some fantastic memories with the people that you've lost, and um, it was not anything I actually even wrote to think about publishing, but once you saw it, you know, Annette works her magic with me sometimes and convinces me to toss stuff out there, and it turned into I think, a rather beautiful short story.
It was. It was a very beautiful short story, and I think it was an honor and nod to your wife. I would guess. So, yes, I love that short. And that kind of leads me to, because I don't know that you could say it was a happily ever after, but it wasn't a not happily ever after. But I know that for you, Karin, happily ever after is like a must. Like you don't write anything that wouldn't be considered for sure a happily ever after. Is that correct?
That's yeah. Although occasionally in a short story, it can be about something like processing grief. And so the happy ever after is that the story shows the person kind of coming out the other side, which is one way to have a happy ever after, but not what a romance reader, when they say, when you put the word romance on it and say it's a romance, it better have a happy ever after, or
Yes.
the pitchforks will come out. I mean, that's a given. I don't understand why anyone debates that. However, in a short story, you can also say this is a romantic short story, meaning it has all the elements of love and trust and hope and betrayal and all of those things, but it may not have a happy ever after. So you have to be very careful with your marketing mostly. But I really like that's another thing that short stories let you do. It lets the character be deeply emotional in ways that might have derailed the standard setup of a novel, or deal with feelings that they didn't really deal with in the novel.
Right.
I've had it happen with two couples now where their financial status in the novel was very imbalanced. One had a lot, the other didn't have much. And in a relationship, 8 years later, you might have them very stressed out about that. One still refusing not to take a dime because that's your money, and not really working through the issues that underlie that imbalance. So, I mean, that's just one example. And again, is that short story a romance? No, they worked out their stuff though, and that's a happy ending to me. It works differently for short stories, I think.
That brings me to the sort of the angst scale. And where are you? I mean, do you tend
All
to
over the
be
place.
all over the so
All over the place.
it just depends on what the story is about, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So you have
Yeah.
low angst ones and you have high angst ones
And high
and everything
angst.
in between.
Yeah, exactly. And so the short stories can reflect that or not. They can be like maybe next time, high angst book. It's a suicidal violinist, and she's suicidal through most of the book. And her coming out of that is very much her personal happy ending. And then finally admitting to her that this relationship could work is the happy ending for the reader. But the short story I finally wrote to follow up on that has almost no angst in it. That was her point, was to say all that's behind me. I have made my peace with all of the things that I did and the things that I broke on purpose. I've made my peace with all of that. I've made my atonement, and I am now happy with where I am, with my family and the people I love and who love me around me. So it's so very, very different. But I like angst, but it's got to have a reason. I don't like generally when people are just angstful for the dramatic effect of it. Let's tie it into their character and make it's got to have something to do with who they are and why they are the way they are. And I like that. I like messy people. I like messy characters. Don't get me wrong. I don't want sanitized characters. I like them messy, but it's got to have a reason, and it's got to have a plot reason.
Yeah, you don't
But you
like
mentioned it. Go ahead. Go ahead.
no,
No, I was going to say, you mentioned a few minutes ago when we were talking about the short stories that you had a character that spoke to you and said, she wasn't done yet.
Yeah.
Is that something that happens often to you?
Hmm. Yeah. I'll have it, it can be something in the news where I go, ooh, well, my my architect would be very interested in that building.
Yeah.
And so that might stir an idea of writing a story about simply about, her and her wife deciding they're going to go visit a building and why they would do that and what they might be working out in the case of that. Like, is this the first time they went to look at a building on because one person wanted to do it? And what took so long to indulge um, her desire to just visit a building?
Do you sometimes feel a sense of irritation until you get those words written out?
Mhm.
Does the character come back to you and say, "Hey, what the hell are you waiting on?
Uh,
Write it already."
Write it already. Yeah, they do. They will come and prod me and say, I wasn't done.
Yeah.
I'm standing right here. I really would like you to do that. My most recent short story release, To Boldly Follow, is very much a character who said, I've been standing here since you wrote the little snippet short story, 5 years ago. I've been waiting for you to come back and ask me what happened later that night. Come on. So that's what I did.
Yeah.
yeah, the characters can talk, but for me, sometimes the short stories come from I just have a character that I absolutely love, and I can't let them go. Is that
Hmm.
true for you too? Where
Yeah.
there's some characters that are your favorite characters, and you
Mhm.
go, I just can't not write another story about them
Yep.
with
Yep.
them.
Yes. Actually, I've written two short stories about a secondary character. Actually, two secondary characters have their own short stories just because I couldn't let them go, but I didn't write them their own book. I could have, I suppose, but could have, would have, should have. But I wanted to write their stories. It's just they they were delightful. You mentioned that, you've got a character that you can't let go, who is, oh, it just, you adore them. And I adore this one. And one of the characters that I adore, her name is Lisa. I figured out it's because she reminds me of me. She's probably the most me person in my books because A, she is always right, and B, nobody ever gives her credit for being right all the time. I mean, just really. So we have that in common. And she's also very stream of consciousness, just sort of drifts from one thought to the other and ends up being right
Yeah,
always.
I have favorite characters. I mean that have several short stories because I just couldn't let them go. And I always said I wasn't going to be a series writer, and then I ended up being a series writer because of the characters that I just couldn't let them
Hmm.
go. I loved them. So
Hmm.
that's funny that your characters won't let you alone.
Yeah.
So, pantster or plotter?
Um, I think in a panel once I described it as more like a panty liner. I'm just I have an outline, and the older I get, the more I have to outline. I have to make notes to myself. I can't carry around a 100,000 word outline in my, for an $100,000 word novel. I can't carry around that outline anymore. I have to leave breadcrumbs for myself. So, um, but I will veer off an outline in a heartbeat. If the character suddenly props up and says, you could take advantage of this and go with this as being your red herring, or this is the big reveal surprise that you didn't think about instead of that lame one you thought of ahead of time, you know. So I let the characters lead me. Um, and sometimes I end up going, okay, maybe that's going to go in a short story and just take it back out. And I use Scrivener, which allows you to snip out things and stash them in another folder. It makes it
Right.
very easy to feel like I can take this out and I don't lose it. It'll always be here.
You
Yeah.
don't feel guilty about cutting that character.
Nope. No, I am the Lord King of their existence, so I get to do whatever I want.
The Lord You mean the Lord Queen?
Lord King
You're
Queen,
the Lord Queen and the Queen of Romance, both.
then yes. Although I have to say, Barbara Greer is the one who called me that. It was
Who was it?
Barbara Greer at
Oh,
Naiad.
Barbara.
I
Uh-huh.
opened, I think it was Painted Moon, the box, the set of paperbacks that I got. I opened it, and on the back it said the undisputed queen of lesbian romance on the back. And I was like, what? I don't, yeah, didn't didn't know that I was. But if Barbara Greer said it was, it was. That's
Well,
just true.
yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
your writing goes back to Naiad Press, which
Yeah.
was some of the first novels that I ever found
Hmm.
of sapphic literature that had happy endings. I mean,
Yeah.
we wanted those for years, and instead we got things like The Well of Loneliness, and even Rita Mae Brown's. I mean, her book Ruby Fruit Jungle is a classic, and I love it, but
Yeah.
it didn't have a very nice ending.
It's not the happy ending. Carol is a very it doesn't have an ambiguous ending, but it's not a resounding ending of it doesn't have the big clinch in the embrace. It ends at a glance, which suits the novel in so many ways. It's a
Right.
brilliantly written novel.
It is.
But it wasn't until we had books like The Swashbuckler by Lee Lynch, which
Yeah.
was just here, happy ending. We pledge ourselves to each other. We don't care what the world doesn't care,
Or
and that they
Catherine
don't
Forrest.
want us.
Oh,
And
she wrote
then
beautiful books of
Curious
Yeah.
happy.
Wine,
Yeah, Curious Wine,
where
Virgins of
that,
Green. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Curious Wine is the novel that I read from the library after seeing Desert Hearts. Curious Wine was the one I read it and said, I don't think I'll ever write anything as good as this, but this is what I want to write.
Yeah.
And that was the one. So I owe it all to Catherine Forrest.
You know, the Desert Hearts, the book, as I recall, I mean, it's been
Mhm.
years since I've read it, but it didn't have as uplifting an end, I didn't think. It was
Mm-mm.
way more ambiguous
It's very ambiguous. Yeah,
than
Desert of
even
the Heart.
the
Jane,
movie. I think they made it a little bit better
a little bit.
where,
You actually get
yeah,
to see her get on the train at
you
the
see
end.
her
And
get
in
on
the
the
novel,
train and
you
yeah,
don't know what she decided
yeah.
ultimately.
So
Um,
even Desert Hearts was not a great
yeah. Oh,
ending.
Jane Rule was not known as a romance writer at
Yeah,
all.
right.
So
Yeah.
Desert of the Heart did not play by the
Right.
standard rules, which is why it remains a brilliant novel.
Right.
Including the exploration of the New West and the desert space
Yeah.
around Las Vegas, and it was Las
Right.
Vegas. No, it was it, or is it Reno? Now I can't remember,
I
but
think it was Reno. I
it
think
was
it was
Reno.
Reno.
That's where,
Mhm.
because everybody was going to Reno. That's where you went to get a divorce,
Right.
which is the heart of the
Yeah.
book is the
Yeah.
need for a woman to get a legal divorce.
Yeah. 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 Things have definitely changed.
Yeah.
So, is there anything else you want to tell us about your recent Frosting on the Cake 3? I know you shared some things, but is there anything else that you'd like to tell us about that collection?
Um, I mean, one of the things that I've done in all three is whether there's a story or not, I have a paragraph or so that talks about the novel written between the last Frosting collection and this one. So it's just sort of for the record, this novel was inspired by and
Okay.
had this, particular outcome. Here's, a criticism or something that I want to speak to, but it's always in a lighthearted way. And in the last Frosting, I chide Merriam-Webster because I wrote a book called Carpool and I wrote a book called Roller Coaster. And at the time, both of those were two-word phrases, two words, and now they are both a single word. And I am not over it. No.
Same with email. Oh, I could
Yep.
go on and on.
Yeah.
All right, where it's now acceptable to not say all right,
Like, yeah,
two
yes.
words, but you
Yeah.
can bring them together in a slang. I mean,
These
there's
were the titles of my books that they suddenly declared.
oh,
I could take it
I know.
personally. Not just one, two. Not over it.
Yeah, but things evolve, so
Yes, they do.
we kind of got to go with the flow. You have a current work in progress that you want to tell us about?
I am working on the fourth. It's the only series I've really written. It's called the Coin of Love series, and I'm working on the fifth novella for the series. They're all either very short novel or long novella, depending on where you draw that line. In
Where do you
length,
draw the line?
at about 40,000 words. That 39,000 words is a long novella and 41,000 words is maybe a short novel. And that's pretty much in romance, because in sci-fi, those numbers are completely different. I mean, people will write novellas and they'll be 70,000 words long. And I'm like, I don't, okay. It works. But that's where you find sagas that are 500, 600, 700 pages long. So
It's because of the
eh,
world building, right?
yeah, exactly. So 70,000 feels like nothing in comparison. But that's where I draw the line. So I'm working on, it's called Covered Hearts. And the series itself is, the premise is that a magical coin forged by the goddess Athena has passed down through the ages from possessor to possessor. And the coin, if the coin decides you're worthy, will allow you to get out of your own way and see the romance that's just right in front of your face. So sort of a matchmaker, sort of not, but it has its own provenance too, and it has its own goal, which is it wants to get back somehow to the goddess. So by helping women find love, it feels like it's doing at least what the goddess would want.
So it's like a fantasy. There's
a fantasy element, and one is set in medieval Scotland, and another in the 1950s of California, back when lesbian pulps were the big rage. And then this one and two others are all contemporary. So I got to, the coin has lived a long time, so I get to pick a period in history and say, I want to write a story about that period in history, like medieval Scotland with a female knight. That was really a lot of fun.
Do you have a favorite subgenre that you like to write in? I mean, I know that you're really known for romance, and that's where my head went most of the time. I didn't even know that you did science fiction.
A little bit. Romance. The story's always going to have a happy ending. I read mystery, though, mostly. I read romance, but it's really hard for me not to red pen when I'm reading romance. And that just comes from years spent, selecting manuscripts and doing some editing or whatever. The red pen's right there. I'm like, oh, well, I would have, deconstructed this. The first thing was at the end of the paragraph, and that needed to be at the front. And then I'm lost. I've lost the plot. I've lost the enjoyment of reading it. So for just sheer pleasure, like vacation reads, I read mysteries. Because I can't write a mystery. I tried. Hats off. I cannot do that. So I do not red pen a mystery unless it's got actual grammatical flaws, which is rare.
Yeah. I don't write true mysteries, but I have dabbled in mystery.
Suspense.
I always call them my mystery light.
Yeah, some suspense.
Sci-fi light. There's a mystery component somewhere in there, but it's not really a mystery.
Yeah. And my magical coin is literally the only magical element of the stories. That it's not set in a magical world, or just if you got to believe a little bit in Athena, and then that the coin exists. That's it.
that I call those things. Yeah, I do that a lot. Because I don't. World building is hard. It's really hard. So I do sci-fi light. I don't like to do the full-blown world building and
well, that's where short stories and novella let you off the hook. I mean, you don't have to dig.
But I don't. But I'll write a full novel with that's technically sci-fi or fantasy, but I don't do the full-blown
the whole
world building stuff.
Although you can also world build in a very short period of time. Like Stephen King, his short stories are astonishingly good, and they're an entire worlds built within them, where you just feel like The Green Mile. That's a short story, and the movie fleshed out. It adapted to a short story, and that's his short stories adapt so well. Like Stand By Me. Is it Stand By Me? No, I'm getting mixed up with Stand and Deliver. That because they're short stories, they make great, brilliant movies, because the movie can explore every aspect of the story, since there's not that much source material. But it's amazing world building and just that. And I can't do that, so I do what I do best.
Yeah.
Romance.
So one last question, because we're asking, well, although Allie may have some more questions, but we're asking questions that we haven't because I'm just so interesting talking to you. And have you ever like written a short story and said, "Gosh, this is so good, I'm going to turn it into a full-length novel"?
Yes, there was and so I'm trying to think which novel was it, and I'm going to look over here. I think it was Substitute for Love that I had originally thought I would write a short story for a Naiad anthology. Naiad did theme-based anthologies, which turned out to be for them very successful in that it introduced their authors to their readers. And I got to a point in the short story where I was sort of outlining it, and I went, well, that's a much better idea, but if I explore that, this is a novel. And so then I did. It was the introduction of a character. I said, if I wanted that character in this short story with that set of issues, that's a novel.
Yeah.
And so it just, I set it aside and I wrote something else, I think.
Allie, you've done that, haven't you? You started something and you were like, "Oh, I'm going to do a short story," and then Allie writes big long books.
Yeah, my short story experience has not been a good one. It's just I can't stop. I don't know where to stop.
Do you know that the others that I wrote was started as a short story, and so did Asset Management. Asset Management was actually a short story,
Wow.
and then it
Yeah,
became
grew and
Something
grew and
something as one of those seeds turned out to be, more of an oak than
Mm.
a privet bush,
yeah.
Yeah, maybe someday I will turn Rainstorm into a full-length novel. But again, it won't be romance. I mean, it is romance, but it doesn't have the classic happy ending that romance has. So it's more fiction because it would be the span of their lives.
Gotcha.
Because it starts off when the woman is at the last stage of life, and she's ready to go, and they're reminiscing about their life together, and she knows
Right.
it's clearly the end.
That would be a great example of something that is very romantic and filled with all of the things that you want in a romance novel, but you can't quite call it a romance.
Yeah, it would be more
Yeah.
fiction.
It would be more general fiction.
Yeah.
But romantic general fiction.
Yeah.
You get to call it romantic, but
Right.
not
Well,
a
because
romance.
I don't know if anybody else uses this term, but I coined a term called romash because there isn't a single book that I've written that doesn't have a romance component to it. So it mashes together whatever with romance. And
Right.
yeah.
Yeah,
So
that's part of the fun. I mean, there are rules, but they were all meant to be broken. And besides, there are no rules
there are,
Yes.
except a happy ending if you call it a romance.
if you call it a romance. Yeah. Yeah, I'll have to remember that. Yeah, pretty much every one of my books has a happy ending. So I haven't yet written a book that doesn't. Is there anything else that you want to share with the audience out there? It's been absolutely a wonderful, delightful conversation that we've been having, and maybe sometime we can have you back again for a different topic.
I would love that.
Great.
I would just, anybody who listens in, chin up. We have always only had each other, and we still have each other. So don't despair that the world is going to crap. It's an army of bots anyway.
Yep.
Trust in your friends and your community and the people you really know.
And vote and hope that November turns out to be a good November. We absolutely need it. We definitely do.
And yes, and if you're not in the United States, we're trying. We're trying. We're trying. We know. And we're trying.
We do. Allie, anything you'd like to share to end?
No, just Karin, it's been an absolute pleasure speaking with you and listening to you, and I've certainly learned a lot about writing short stories this afternoon, and just keep on entertaining us.
Oh,
for
Well,
many,
thank
many
you.
years.
That's what I think. We should all continue with that. That's the most important thing. The only way, the only way not to, no, the only bad way to write a book is not to write the book.
Very good advice.
No.
Thank you so much, Karin. We really appreciate you joining us. It really has been such a wonderful conversation that we've had and so enjoyable. And I'm sure that once I put this out there, the readers are going to go nuts with watching the YouTube video and whatever I put out on Facebook. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank
We really
you.
appreciate it.
One other question is 3 released already?
Yes, it is.
Okay. All
Yeah.
right. I wasn't sure.
And it's a Goldie finalist.
All right.
Awesome.
Yay.
Great.
I'm very pleased.
Probably by, well, in a couple of short weeks, we'll know if it's a Goldie winner, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
I'll be in Orlando, so
We'll be
Yeah.
crossing our fingers for you.